Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. This is Glossy Philosophy. My name is Jansen Bidman and today you are tuned in for a book talk. Today we are talking about The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. So this book talk is kind of long overdue. I did the first book talk on my blog about The Tipping Point, and so now I'm going back and doing a video, and today with me is this amazing human being who is my husband. His name is Jevin Bidman, and he's super smart because he's a lawyer. So it's gonna be a good one, you guys. Let's just quickly talk about a brief synopsis of The Tipping Point. So I honestly think that the cover kind of tells the whole story. It says how little things can make a big difference. And we will come back to the cover art in a moment. So just park that for a second. Basically, Malcolm Gladwell takes a whole bunch of different scenarios from children's television to an actual epidemic of AIDS to crime, and he somehow connects them all together with how you can change them, how they start, how you can possibly stop them if it's something negative. And he creates these rules and just kind of like a backbone idea of how they begin and how they stick. Stickiness is kind of a main theme in this book. Something else that you will read about in this book is going to be like the 3 types of people that are really important in creating these epidemics. And when he says epidemic, he doesn't necessarily mean like an illness or something negative. He says that about like children's television and creating an epidemic of literacy. So it's not necessarily negative, it's just kind of how he sees things spread and how he's connected all of these different things. And in the end of the book, he has this great chapter about how after he wrote this is going to be like 2nd or 3rd edition of this book, where people have written to him saying how basically their lives have changed from reading this book, or how their businesses have changed because people have taken these ideas of little things making a big difference and how they've implemented them into their daily lives and into their business. So that is basically a synopsis of The Tipping Point. So now we are going to talk about kind of like our favorite thing or the thing that has really stuck with us about the book. And then we'll go into something that really surprised us and then whether or not we would recommend it. So, Jevin, what was like your favorite idea, chapter, person, thing?
So the idea that has stuck with me is when the book was talking about Sesame Street versus Blue's Clues. And I remember watching Blue's Clues with my younger brother when I was probably about 10 or 11 and he was 4 or so, and I thought, this is the most boring show I've ever seen in my life. And they show the same show day after day after day, Monday through Friday. So 5 days in a row, same show. And it turns out that that's actually by design. The creators of Blue's Clues learned that that's how kids learn and how they can develop mastery of the concepts that are being discussed. And so I read this book recently with an eye toward business development and trying to develop my own business. And so that struck home with me because I've been learning that you need 7 to 14 touch points with a person before the information you're giving them really sticks in, and before they can be in a position to need your services. So making that connection between the stickiness of Blue's Clues for kids and the importance of being on somebody's radar over and over again, and maybe in the same ways, really hit home with me.
I also thought it was really interesting that people that worked on Sesame Street who saw some of the gaps and the holes in the show were able to take those ideas and create Blue's Clues. I thought that was really interesting. I always like it when somebody can start something amazing like Sesame Street and then create their own better version. And I don't know if this is true at all, disclaimer, but I swear Daniel Tiger is like the next version of Blue's Clues, because I see a lot of the same things that Malcolm Gladwell is talking about from Blue's Clues. And I watched Sesame Street as a kiddo, and our kiddo is now watching Daniel Tiger, and I'm just like, yes, there are those long pauses, and yes, she does like to watch the same thing like 15 times in a row, and she doesn't get bored. But I feel like they've taken those things that you're kind of like, this is so boring, and just improved upon them some more. So that's my theory. I don't know if that's true.
Daniel Tiger is less boring than Blue's Clues. I can say that.
It's pretty good. I'm not going to lie. I think, gosh, my favorite thing, so this is my third time reading this book this year, and I did not read it as in-depth this time as I read it the first time, but there were still things that I kind of forgot about, and I think one of the things that I really loved was, this is like a love and a surprise at the same time, was when Malcolm Gladwell is talking about the graffiti in the New York subway system. And so what's going on in this chapter is Malcolm Gladwell is trying to discuss how some people got rid of like this major crime wave in New York City, and especially focusing on the subway system. So you have people who aren't paying their fares, you have people who are doing graffiti, you just have like, it sounds like mass chaos, and I'm really glad that I wasn't there during that time. And how people who are in charge, they got new people in, and they all got on board with this idea of, let's just start small. Let's hit the small stuff. Let's hit the actionable stuff. All the cars are going to get cleaned if they're not going to be new. And if we are doing new cars, it's going to be the same thing. Like, we're not going to let people destroy our stuff, basically. And then everyone is going to start to see that we are taking ownership of this, and this is not okay. I think in a weird way, one of my favorite parts is when the guy who was in charge of the trains says that they would watch the kids graffiti the trains for 3 days, 3 nights in a row, and then they would just calmly walk over and paint over the graffiti, and the kids would cry. And I'm just like, that is just so genius. Like, because it's just like, boom, no, we're not okay with this anymore. I thought that was just, I always, like, every single time I've read that, I'm like, oh, that's such a good chapter.
It's interesting you brought that up. So I wonder what Malcolm Gladwell would think about. So the broken windows framework was really big in the early 2000s, and it's come under scrutiny over the last many years. I think that there's more of a thought that there's other factors at play as well. And then, also I'll put my lawyer hat on here for a second, is that the emphasis on those lower level crimes turned into the stop and frisk scheme in New York City in the 2010s that came under really strict scrutiny for constitutional issues. So, it may be that was a good idea at first, and it morphed into something that was not as healthy. But it is an interesting theory, and I'd be interested to see what he thinks of it today.
To kind of piggyback off what you just said, it did strike me this time reading about when they were able to go beyond the graffiti and they started arresting people for not paying, and it was just like, he said that they would just line them up in like a chain gang and just get them booked, get them all this stuff. And at first I was like, ooh, that seems really, really harsh for like not paying, 25 cents, I think he said it was at the time. But then he follows it up with, a lot of them had priors, a lot of them were carrying weapons, a lot of them. So, I mean, I just don't know. I definitely don't know enough about the stop and frisk and all that stuff, but it was yeah, it is something that in my head seems like, ooh, are we heading in a wrong direction? And eventually I think we did, and we had to ring it back. But yeah, it is, I like the idea of making actionable small changes that everybody can see, and then we take ownership. I remember going to a teacher training once, and they showed this video of like kind of a down and out school, and I mean, this school had like fences around it, and on the inside, like everything was really lovely. And they said it was because the janitors and the teachers and eventually the students all jumped on board with like, no, this is our home away from home, and we're going to take care of it. And a lot of the vandalism like went down, and people really, like, they didn't hardly have any problems. And if you looked at the outside of the school, you'd think like, ooh, no thanks.
Well, it's also a change that you could make without a huge amount of grant money. You know, buying a new set of textbooks can cost millions of dollars for a school district, but a coat of paint is something that's really doable.
Right. Love it. So what was something that really surprised you?
I think the thing that surprised me the most is that in order to have this type of social epidemic that Malcolm Gladwell is talking about, in order to tip it into something that everybody knows about, it takes very specific people who are very rare to disseminate that information, which is the connectors, the mavens, and the salespeople. Mm-hmm. And I think as we think about our social networks, we can all think of somebody who, for example, the connector is somebody who has lots of friends in different areas, and is kind of it's one of those people who knows everybody. Like, you talk to them, hey, my grandma is one of them, so like she just knows everybody.
Yeah, truth.
So, but these people are very rare. Yeah. So if you're trying to, I guess at a base level, if you're trying to sell a product, you need to get at least one connector on your side who can then connect that product to other people that might enjoy it. But those people are rare, so it's kind of a crapshoot as to whether the people that are able to do that are in your network and you're able to connect with them to make that happen.
I was also really surprised by that. One of the stories that really sticks out for me is when he talks to Horchow. I can't think of his first name, but he scores like almost full points on the connector scale, and he literally knows everybody. And there's this whole story about how he like earns the rights to a Gershwin musical because he knows somebody who knew the girlfriend of Gershwin, and just all these connections are bananas. And he keeps a spreadsheet about like everybody that he finds interesting, which is pretty much everyone. And if you happen to share like your birthday in a conversation with him, then he's going to make a note and he's going to send you a birthday card. And it's just like shocking. Malcolm Gladwell himself is like, most of us decide not to have relationships like that. Like, that's a lot of work. But then he follows it up with, Horchow is a master of, I think it's called the weak connection or something like that, where you're never going to be like super buddy with someone like Horchow, but you're always going to feel like, I really like you. Like, I like being with you. I like spending time with you. I wish we could get to know each other better, but you never will.
Yeah, I think he said that he finds people interesting.
Yeah.
And just like that's his hobby is learning about people and keeping in touch with them at more of an indirect level.
Yeah, that was quite shocking. And kind of thinking about that on like a social media idea, you can definitely see the connectors and the salespeople and the mavens. Like, each of those people are going to be very successful on social media once they really tap into whatever those are. And yeah, like you were saying, businesses need all of them to make something happen. And it could be a business that's trying to sell you clothes, or it could be like a business trying to sell you an idea. So anything like that.
What do you think you are?
I'm a maven for sure. I collect information like nobody's business, and then I like to share it.
It's true.
What are you?
I don't know that I'm really any of them. I think maybe I have some aspects of a maven, but I think a difference between us is I would be perfectly happy just coming home and tending to my garden and not talking to you people. I mean, I'm happy to do it, but like it's not something that is like a burning desire for me.
Yeah, you don't need to share your information.
I don't need to.
You know what you should read? Faust. So would you recommend Malcolm Gladwell and or The Tipping Point?
I would definitely recommend Malcolm Gladwell, and I think The Tipping Point is a great representation of the way that he writes. He has a unique perspective on the world, and I think does a really good job of taking a huge data set and compiling or distilling it into its constituent elements and teasing out a theory from that. And I don't always agree with him, but I think that the way that he thinks about issues is really interesting, and I think even if you don't agree with it, you learn a lot from the process that he takes.
I love Malcolm Gladwell, and I think it's safe to say, and Jevin can attest to this, that at the beginning of the year, I went through a slight obsession with Malcolm Gladwell. But I will say that The Tipping Point is a really great place to start if you are just starting your Malcolm Gladwell journey. And can I just say that I heard in an interview with Malcolm Gladwell from his own lips that his gear audience is a 45-year-old man that has got to stop. Ladies, we need to read his books because they're so good. And even if you don't agree with him, which I don't always agree with him, that would be bananas. He, in interviews with other people, including Harvard professors, he's always very nice about disagreeing with them, which I greatly respect, especially in today's climate of you can't talk about anything without throwing a book at somebody. So it's really great to see two very intelligent people. I'm gesturing at us right now.
Where are the intelligent people?
Two intelligent people talking about ideas that they don't agree with. I think it's just in a nice way. It's refreshing. It's nice.
Well, I don't agree with that.
Okay. But again, The Tipping Point is a really great place to start because in another interview with Malcolm Gladwell, because I was obsessed, he says that at the end of The Tipping Point, he felt like he needed to talk about more controversial things, and he felt like he really needed to dig into more crime and violence that's going on in America. And you can definitely see that in Blink and David and Goliath. And some of those stories are pretty hard to digest. Whereas The Tipping Point, there are a few stories where it's just oh my gosh, really? But at the end, I think it's just so uplifting, and you really feel like anybody can make a difference by doing those small things, whether it's something financial or volunteering at your library or just how you spend your day, just making small, actionable things to better your life. So I would definitely recommend The Tipping Point. And let's talk about the cover art for just a moment before we end. So I'm ashamed to say that it took me forever to understand why the cover artist, and yes, I do have a Paw Patrol Band-Aid on my finger, please excuse me, put a matchstick on the cover, because I'm did they not read the title? The Tipping Point. It's supposed to be something tipping, which is why I took a picture of myself tipping. And then I realized that no, you are the match. You are the matchstick. You are about to light that idea. You are about to light that epidemic, or somebody is. And that's why it's not lit, and that's why there's only one. So well done, cover artist. Thank you guys so much for watching this book talk about Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. I hope it was really entertaining. It was really fun to have a chit chat, not only with you, but also with my husband. And I just want to give another thank you to Jevin Binman for helping me out on making this book talk a little bit more exciting. I do fashion videos normally every Wednesday. I do beauty videos every Friday. So thank you again for watching. Hit that thumbs up and the subscribe, and I will see you very soon. Bye.